Fat Joe denies the claims, calling the suit a retaliatory smear campaign. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Well, it's a pretty busy ride as you go through Mid-City on the 10 East. Expect some slow traffic between Crenshaw all the way to the 110. And then in Westlake on the 101 North just before Silver Lake Boulevard, that's an earlier crash. It is up on that right shoulder. Some delays coming from the 5. Also in downtown LA, 101 South, the on-ramp to Vignes is going to be partially blocked for a crash. There is going to be a little bit of slowing there. Also in Encino, 101 South just before Haskell. Right shoulder also has a crash. Stop and go coming from White Oak.
Is this the time?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Whenever the Oklahoma City Thunder faced a challenge in the NBA regular season, the playoffs, or the finals, they rose up and got the job done. OKC played like champions most of the season, and they were on top of their game Sunday night, using a dominant second half to beat the Indiana Pacers 103-91 for their first NBA championship since moving to OKC in 2008. NBA MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was also voted MVP of the finals. SGA led the Thunder with 29 points, 12 assists, and 2 block shots. Indiana had to play most of the game without star point guard Tyrese Halliburton, who suffered an Achilles tendon injury with 4:55 left in the first quarter. There was another major news story in the NBA on Sunday. The Phoenix Suns traded future Hall of Famer Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets, a young team that made it to the Western Conference semifinals this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
LA's newest soul food restaurant is getting spectacular reviews.
Great place with amazing food. The Sunday champagne brunch is fabulous. I saw the place on IG. We tried it for lunch. We were blown away by the food and the service. The restaurant has an inviting atmosphere and a dynamic vibe.
Over the years, Lionel has catered most major Black events in Los Angeles, including all of our KBLA Talk 1580 gatherings. But now he has his own spot, Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine, and you need to check it out at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles. Oxtails, baked or fried chicken, meatloaf, turkey chops, pork chops, catfish, short ribs, and all the fixins. Collard greens, mac and cheese, yams, red beans, black-eyed peas, and more. And of course, hot water cornbread, satisfying drinks, and delicious desserts. Lionel's is a great place for brunch, lunch, or dinner. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you, because we've got your black. So, head on over to Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles and tell Lionel you heard about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com. That's thetavisSmileyShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, I expect a sobering conversation with Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali about last week's celebration of Juneteenth, even as environmental justice is under a vicious assault. We'll do that in hour two. In our third hour,
the first show was in some small rural area in Indiana. Listen to me. It is all white. Nobody in there black but me. No workers black. I'm the only black person there. And when I got up on that stage, I told them folks, I said, hey, y'all do know this is a comedy show and not an auction. Because it was like an all-white party. I was looking for Frankie Beverly. Where he at? Yeah.
Funny stuff from Marcus D. Wiley, even though he's bagging on my home state of Indiana. Comedian Marcus D. Wiley talks about his latest comedy special, Marriage is a Major Surgery, in our final hour today. But in this first hour, let's talk politics with author, bookstore owner, professor, and towering public intellectual Marc Lamont Hill. Marc is so busy, I can't even keep up with all the stuff he has going on. He is presently co-host of Upfront on Al Jazeera English and part of the crew on the Joe Budden Podcast, among other professional commitments. Last week, we celebrated the 4th anniversary of my home station here in L.A., KBLA Talk 1580, and the 4th anniversary of this particular radio show, which is now syndicated across the country, and for that I am grateful. But before national syndication, the very first guest on this program 4 years ago this week was Marc Lamont Hill, and I remain eternally grateful to MLH for helping this program achieve liftoff, and I welcome him back to this program. Marc Lamont Hill, how are you today, sir?
I am good, my brother. It's so good to hear your voice, and it's so good to be part of the anniversary celebration, man. I got to congratulate you, man. It take more than a notion to build something, run something, maintain something, much less grow something. And you've done all the above, man. I'm so proud of you, and I thank God for you.
You were kind, and I appreciate that. I was glad to have you here 4 years ago, and you've been here any number of times, of course, since then, and delighted to have you on this program today. There's a lot to cover in this first hour. Obviously, we start with the biggest story in the world right now, this Iran drama, which continues to unfold. I'm sure you all heard this over the weekend, but just to set the frame properly for Marc and I as we move through this hour, this was Donald Trump on Saturday.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
That was Donald Trump on Saturday. We now know a couple of days later that maybe not obliterated. Donald Trump is always given, as you know, to excess in his language. A lot to unpack in this hour about what's happening in Iran. It seems to me at this hour there are 3 options for Iran. 1, Iran retaliates. 2, Iran negotiates. Or 3, this gets messier. I'm also fascinated to get Marc Lamont Hill's take on how black folk in particular ought to see this. Through what lens ought we be looking at what's happening right now in the Middle East? And there's other news, of course. A great deal to cover in this first hour. Delighted to be on today with Marc Lamont Hill in hour one. June continues, and we continue our celebration of Black Music Month. You know, we do it every single day in the month of June. We pick a different artist. And all 3 hours of our program, we play the best of their music. We've done gospel, we've done R&B, we've done hip-hop, we've done jazz, we've done folk, and today we do reggae. All 3 hours. Guess who? The best of Bob Marley on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
the best of Bob Marley, all 3 hours of our program today as we continue our celebration of June as Black Music Month. We choose a different artist of the day and weave in and out of these amazing conversations with our guests with some of the best of their catalogs. So today we're going to reggae with Bob Marley all 3 hours. In this first hour, our guest is Marc Lamont Hill. Delighted to have him back on this program. So Marc, let me just start with a couple of broad questions. We'll get more specific as we move through this hour. When you heard the news, actually let me back up before you heard the news, because it seems to me that Donald Trump was itching to drop these bombs in the first place. I did C-SPAN last Wednesday or Thursday, as I recall, for an hour on Washington Journal, and this came up then, and I suggested then that these bombs were gonna drop as surely as my name is Tavis Smiley. It just seemed again that even though Donald Trump was saying I'll make a decision in the next 2 weeks, I never bought that then. Again, his finger was already on the trigger, it seems to me, and so I was not surprised at all by what Donald Trump did. Never mind all his schizophrenic words back and forth about what he was going to do, what he wasn't going to do, when he was going to decide, when he wasn't. I was never fooled by that. This happened as I expected that it would. What was your read of it leading up to it?
You know, you were more prescient than I was. I didn't believe what Donald Trump was saying, and I shared your opinion that he was itching to do something. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel as certain to me as it probably should have. Donald Trump has done nothing to make me think that he is reasonable or cogent. But Donald Trump also historically hasn't, he's preferred to stay out of conflict, certain conflicts. If it doesn't make money for him, he ain't worried about it. Mm-hmm. But the one exception, at least in the short term thinking, is Israel. There was some tension between Trump and Netanyahu over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and many of us were hoping, and partly what I was hearing from insiders, was that there was a growing sense of dissatisfaction from Netanyahu's side that Trump wasn't falling 100% in step. 99 ain't enough. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't shocked by the U.S.'s decision to bomb or Trump's decision to bomb, but I wasn't like, this is 100%. I probably would have said there's a 60-40 chance. Mm-hmm. But I still thought that there might be some restraint used because of the long-term implications of this, not because I think Trump cares about Iranian people or the Middle East or Palestinians or anybody else, but this is going to create increased sites of danger for the United States. It could compromise oil revenue. It could undermine U.S. interests, and that's not something Donald Trump typically wants to do.
Yeah. So in Donald Trump campaign, to your point, and I see exactly why you were in the frame that you were in, because he campaigned saying that no more wars. Essentially, that was his theme during the campaign. No more wars. He's only a few months in, and that didn't hold. So here we are now on the eve potentially of more conflict. As I said earlier, there are only a few options as I see it. Iran retaliates, Iran negotiates, or this gets messier. I feel like I'm on a Jeopardy board now. You want to choose one of those three?
I'm taking it gets messier for 500.
Okay.
Iran has made it clear after the U.S. strikes and before the U.S. strikes, we have a right to defend ourselves. After northeastern Tehran was bombed, I guess about a week ago now, they made it very clear that they were going to retaliate, and they did. After the U.S. bombs, they said we have a right to defend ourselves. That could be a power position to negotiate, but nothing in the history of post-1979 Iran makes me believe that they're going to remain calm, and for good reason. If you think about Israel's ultimate position, they believe Iran is an existential threat as such. In my estimation, the nuclear sites and the threat of nuclear proliferation is just a part of it. They actually believe that Iran just should not exist. In much the way that they accuse Iran of saying Israel, shouldn't exist, and ironically, and so what ends up happening now is that Israel, and particularly Netanyahu, which we need to come back to, will always manufacture a reason. He will always manufacture a threat. There will always be an excuse to engage in military intervention in Iran, and to that extent, if that aligns with Trump interests, then all we're seeing is a proxy war, and we're really seeing Israel operate as a U.S. military base rather than a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm. You said we'll come back to BB. We will come back to BB in just a second, I promise. But let me just say this to those who have not followed this story as closely as Mark and I have. This is what we do, of course, for a living every day. And our job is to try to make this understandable, at least to those of you who don't follow it as closely as we do. But I was fascinated. My father was in the Air Force for, 37 years. I'm a military kid to begin with. But even though I have my critiques, of course, of the military-industrial complex, that's another conversation for another time. But I was fascinated by this bomb, this bunker buster bomb, as they call it. Let me just explain to you right quickly how this works, as I have read this in a number of different places. So most bombs drop, and when they drop and they hit, they explode. Not this bomb. This bomb basically drops. It drills its way essentially 200 feet into the earth, into the ground, and then it explodes. Talk about technology. This sucker drops out of a plane, drills itself like 200 or 300 feet into the ground, and once it's in the ground, then it explodes. That's why it's called a bunker buster bomb. It goes underground and then explodes, and that's why they use this particular bomb in Iran. We are the only persons in the world, apparently, who have this particular bomb. BB was asking for this bomb, and I suspect, it seems to me at least, rather than give him the bomb that Donald Trump has in his arsenal, he just signed up to do it himself. So you said we're going to get back to BB. Let's go there now. So it ultimately appears to me that Donald Trump did BB's dirty work for him. Now we're giving Israel, that is, we're giving Israel weapons all the time. In that regard, Donald Trump is no different than Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave him weapons, and Donald Trump has given weapons like every other president, frankly, in the history of this republic. So Donald Trump could have, as part of our deal with them, given these planes, given these bombs, or certainly sold them to Israel. He chose not to do that. And maybe the argument is that, Iran was so close to developing this nuclear weapon that we didn't have time to give it to Israel, teach them how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. One can make that argument. I'm not. My point simply is this, Mark, that Donald Trump did Bibi Netanyahu's dirty work for him, never mind the back and forth, the up and down in their relationship over the last few weeks. What do you make of that fact?
I think, one, your analysis is spot on. The United States did Israel's dirty work, which it has for a very long time. Sometimes it happens militarily, but it's always happened diplomatically. I mean, every time you see a UN Security Council resolution vetoed, it's almost always because the United States has vetoed it. Being one of the nations that has the power to veto these resolutions, the United States has been able to insulate Israel from any kind of global accountability. This has always happened. When you look at the United States cutting funds from the United Nations Relief Works Agency, UNRWA, which is the economic, financial, educational, medical lifeblood of the Palestinian people, when the United States cut those funds, first under Trump permanently, then under Biden last June, and then again under Trump, we see it coming again. Mm-hmm. We see them again applying a certain kind of pressure to the Palestinian people, Israel's dirty work. So we could go step by step from October 7th forward and look at that. We could look from really the 1960s. And when we look at the weapons technology, the Hawk missile, under the Kennedy administration is that first moment where we begin to really see the quote unquote special relationship between the United States and Israel forge. It wasn't a moral alliance. It wasn't purely a political alliance. It was primarily an economic alliance where the United States saw an economic interest that they could pursue. I think that Netanyahu is in an interesting position to apply a unique kind of pressure to Trump, but not, it's unique in its intensity, not in its form. To your point, every U.S. president has done this to some extent. Ironically, it's probably Reagan and maybe George H.W. Bush who have done the least of it. But every U.S. president, for the most part, has moved in this way. The argument that you represented from the opposing side, or from other voices who might say the U.S. had no choice because of the urgency of the nuclear threat, that position is contradicted by the facts. Even if we were to believe that Iran was working on a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon, based on uranium enrichment. There is no evidence.
That's right.
Even based on the best intelligence the United States has, that was happening at all. But even if it were, you're talking about 2 or 3 years minimum before they'd be anywhere close to developing the kind of technology that would be the threat that they're talking about based on U.S. intelligence. Donald Trump didn't follow U.S. intelligence. Donald Trump ignored U.S. intelligence. And so the idea of taking this massive ordnance penetrator, the MOP, also known in these diplomatic streets as the bunker busting bomb, a 30,000 pound. I mean, there was no reason for this to happen. There was no reason for this to happen except that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have been in a very strong and complicated alliance. And I think the best piece of evidence of that, or a really interesting piece of evidence of that, is the fact that Joe Biden couldn't close a deal on a has no interest in a real ceasefire, from what I can see. But they didn't even give the appearance of doing a ceasefire under Biden. But the moment Trump steps in, suddenly they agreed to the terms that were no more or less favorable than they were under Biden 6 months earlier. The question is why? Why was Netanyahu interested in making Donald Trump look like the savior of the Middle East? And what interest did Donald Trump offer as a quid pro quo for making that happen? Those types of questions may give us some insight into why we're doing each other's dirty work at a moment like this.
Yep. Let me add, not that you need my help, Marc Lamont Hill is brilliant all by himself, but let me just add to his argument about why I don't buy this either, and why the evidence on this does not stack up. So the first thing you have to believe, if you believe that Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are on the right side of history here, you have to believe that we would allow Iran to get within 2 weeks of a nuclear bomb before we made this move. I mean, right. Are you following me here? That's what Donald Trump said. They were 2 weeks away from completing this nuclear weapon. Now, I'm not Boo Boo the Fool, and I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. So we're gonna let Iran get within 2 weeks. This is Donald Trump talking, not Tavis. They're just a couple of weeks away. And now, all of a sudden, we get concerned about this. Okay, that's stupid, number one. Number two, Tulsi Gabbard, during her hearings, you've seen the video everywhere, suggested that there was no evidence that Iran was that was any closer to develop a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump was asked about this on Air Force One, and he said, I don't care what she said. This is Donald Trump talking about his. Yeah, he's talking about. I mean, this stuff would be funny.
It's so crazy. He's like, she's wrong then.
Exactly. He said, I don't care what she said. They're within 2 weeks of completing this nuclear weapon. So he's contradicting, again, as Mark said, the intelligence, the U.S. intelligence that Tulsi Gabbard spoke to during her confirmation hearings. You got to believe, again, secondly, that we would let them get within 2 weeks of doing this. To all of a sudden get our ire up enough to challenge them, and then thirdly, you have to believe that. Well, let me hold that third point to when we come forward. I want to make this last point when we come forward. My clock is on me, and I want to dissect rather a bit more with Marc Lamont Hill when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish. Minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Is this the title?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
Whenever the Oklahoma City Thunder faced a challenge in the NBA regular season, the playoffs, or the finals, they rose up and got the job done. OKC played like champions most of the season, and they were on top of their game Sunday night, using a dominant second half to beat the Indiana Pacers 103-91 for their first NBA championship since moving to OKC in 2008. NBA MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was also voted MVP of the finals. SGA led the Thunder with 29 points, 12 assists, and 2 block shots. Indiana had to play most of the game without star point guard Tyrese Halliburton, who suffered an Achilles tendon injury with 4:55 left in the first quarter. There was another major news story in the NBA on Sunday. The Phoenix Suns traded future Hall of Famer Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets, a young team that made it to the Western Conference semifinals this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
And the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Ooh, yeah. All right, well, jamming. I wanna jam it with you. We're jamming, and I hope you like jamming too. Ain't no rules, ain't no vow, we can do it anyhow. I and I will see you through.
I'm Tavis Smiley. Glad to have you with us in this first hour of our program today. We are playing the best of Bob Marley. All 3 hours of our program today as we continue our celebration of June as Black Music Month. Our guest in this first hour is Marc Lamont Hill. I was just saying moments ago that there are a few things that I wanted to add to the point that Marc Lamont Hill was making. The first is you have to be stuck on stupid to believe that we would allow Iran to get within 2 weeks of completing a nuclear weapon before we dropped our bunker buster bombs. Anybody stuck on stupid, number one. Number two, Donald Trump, as Marc Lamont Hill made the argument quite eloquently moments ago, ignored all U.S. intelligence about where Iran was in its nuclear program, its nuclear enrichment program. The third point I was going to make moments ago was that the UN has said that they have detected no uptick whatsoever in radiation coming out of these sites in Iran. So you can believe Bibi, you can believe Donald Trump, you can believe the UN. Since we know that Bibi has an agenda, we know that Donald Trump is a perennial liar. I'm going with the UN on this one, Mark. They have seen no uptick in any sort of radiation coming out of any of these sites in Iran. And then the final point I would make is you'd have to believe that Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are not interested in regime change inside of Iran. And all you have to do is go to Donald Trump's True Social account. And what's he talking about today? regime change. At first, it was about peace, and we're doing this because we need Iran to move toward peace. We need them to abandon their nuclear weapons program. Then all of a sudden, as is so often the case in these circumstances, the conversation pivots, Mark, to what they really wanted to do in the first place, which is to engage a conversation about regime change. Didn't take long for Donald Trump to change his mind about dropping these bombs on Iran. First, he wasn't sure he was going to do it. Didn't take him long to change his mind on that. And now it hasn't taken long for him to change the conversation to one of regime change. So here we go again, Marc Lamont Hill.
Whew. It is it's disappointing how foreseeable and predictable this is. This isn't even interesting in terms of how they've navigated this. You know, this isn't the first time the U.S. has pretended that there was an imminent nuclear threat, as you pointed out. And it really is laughable. Oh, yeah, they were 2 weeks away. If we had just waited 2 more weeks, everything would have been different. And it's so absurd. And again, it's contradicted by all evidence everywhere. But as he talks and it says, okay, it's time for a regime change, we see the same thing in Gaza, different circumstances in some ways, but ultimately saying there will be no peace until we're happy with who is placed in position. And when we think about the Shah being overthrown in 1979 in Iran, if we think about the toppling of Saddam Hussein, if we think about Muammar Gaddafi, if we think about, we could look at numerous spaces in the geographic and political Middle East over the last 5 decades and watched how the U.S. will put its thumb on the scale while promoting democracy, right? We want democracy, but the way we're going to get it is by executing leaders, inserting our power, and shaping who has access to voting so that we get the outcome we want. And when we don't get the outcome we want, we will isolate and starve the people. I mean, we see that in Gaza. I mean, whatever you think of Hamas won the election democratically, fair and square 20 years ago. Now, obviously, there hasn't been an election since, and we can critique that. But my point is the U.S. never gave Gaza a day of self-determination, despite them being democratically elected. That's not what they're about. And Trump is making that very clear. And this is all based on Israel's political ambitions, and Netanyahu's desire, I would argue, to stay in power. Netanyahu is one lost election away from a prison cell. Mm-hmm. And when you're very close to prison, you'll do anything to stay out. And for him, it's to remain prime minister. And how do you remain prime minister? By remaining a wartime prime minister. And how do you remain a wartime prime minister? By continuing to blow ish up. Mm-hmm. And that's been his approach to everything. And that's why he and Trump interestingly aligned right now.
I'm glad you went there. Most people are not as courageous as Marc Lamont Hill is to make the comment he just made, but I hope you heard him loud and clear. I've raised that issue a number of times on this program. Let me just drill down on that just one more second before I move forward. What do you make of the fact that the world is watching Bibi Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel because he doesn't want to go to prison, because he's trying to, cement his legacy, continuing what he's doing in Gaza, now in Iran. But so much of this is about his personal ambition, about, again, cementing his own legacy and about staying out of prison. But lives, thousands, tens of thousands of lives are being lost because of Bibi's personal agenda, and yet it continues unabated, Mark.
To have empathy or care about the lives lost, you have to see them as lives. And to see them as lives, you got to see them as human in a lot of ways. Mm. And I think that after a century of Israeli settler colonial domination in the Middle East, part of the narrative that has proliferated, it's not just Israel. Let me be clear. The West has this disposition in general that if they black or they brown, somehow their lives are more disposable. And so and when you frame the Palestinian population as barbaric, as pre-modern, as unfit for democracy, etc., savage, then it becomes much easier to justify or explain away the kind of violence we've seen in Gaza, the kind of violence we've seen in the West Bank. And when you combine that with the media apparatus that not only shares the narrative of sort of black and brown subhumanity, but also proliferates these narratives that Hezbollah and Hamas, and we could look at Ansar Allah in Yemen, the Houthis. That all of these people are constantly, their only goal in life is not self-determination, freedom, or liberation. There's no principle resistance ever, that it's just to kill Israel and to kill Israelis. If that becomes the narrative, which would be an awful narrative, it'd be an awful thing if people were out there just trying to kill Jewish people or trying to kill Israelis or trying, we would hate that.
Sure.
Because that's the narrative, it becomes easier to accept all U.S. violence, all Western imperial violence, all Israeli violence as legitimate. And so for a lot of people, it's not like, to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs, which is an awful way to think about things, but that's how settler colonialism always works. I think it's even worse than that. I think it's like, are these really eggs? I think that becomes sort of the narrative of how we think about what's going on in Iran and in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Let me circle back to Iran one more time here. I was talking to some friends this weekend, and one of them said something that I hadn't even thought about, which is actually pretty smart. I told her, I said, I should have used a guest on the program because I didn't even think about it in this way. But we talked earlier in this conversation, Mark, about how Iran responds, and three options, at least as I see it. They retaliate, as I said earlier, they negotiate, or this gets messier. Marc Lamont Hill chose gets messier. Let me flip the frame on that. Maybe it doesn't get messier for the reason that my friend suggested this weekend. That under any other president in the history of this republic, Iran might have chosen to retaliate to sort of test where we were and see how we might respond. But Donald Trump is another cat altogether. You see where I'm going with this. He's another guy altogether. You know the acronym these days. We ain't going to say it on radio. FAFO. FAFO. Iran doesn't want to FAFO. I'll leave that where it is. They don't want to do that, right? Because Donald Trump is a crazy man. And if you retaliate, he very well could just wipe you off the map and not think anything about it. It's the point you just made, that he has to first see you as human. He has to believe that your lives really matter. All the stuff you just laid out that I can't repeat because you said it so eloquently, but that's really the point, that if you push Donald Trump the wrong direction, he could literally, just as commander-in-chief, wipe Iran off the map. They have to know that Donald Trump is crazy, and maybe that becomes the reason why they don't retaliate in the way or at the level that we otherwise think they would. I digress, if that makes any sense to you at all, Marc Lamont Hill.
It makes sense. The problem is, and that's not off the table. I mean, that might be the answer.
Right.
But my hunch is, we've already seen Iran start to retaliate already, right? In Haifa and other places. So it don't seem like they're operating from that perspective. But the reason why I think they wouldn't is because Donald Trump is also a bully.
Yeah.
And when he sees signs of weakness, he goes even deeper. So it's not like these are reasonable people where if he said, if they said, if we don't retaliate, everything will get back to peace. They don't want peace. So it seems to me that not retaliating doesn't necessarily produce a better outcome. Mm-hmm. So I think at that point, you have to ask, well, what is the benefit of resistance? Is that double the damage that we experience? Will more people die? Will fewer people die? And that calculation gets more interesting when you add Russia to the mix. Mm-hmm. Because that's the piece that people have to think about. It's not just that Iran is fighting Israel, which itself is a formidable opponent given all those nuclear weapons Israel has that they never admit to. When you add the United States to it as a kind of, and you see Israel as a client state, it becomes fairly formidable or insurmountable. But when you add Russia to the mix, and Russia's already been in the mix, Hezbollah, and I would argue the Houthis as well in Yemen have gotten significant resources from Russia. So when you add that to the mix, Iran has the power to make this thing ugly. And nothing in the history of Iranian military intelligence suggests that they're just going to lay down, even if it would be wise, even if some would argue it would be wise to, for the reason you said, Donald Trump is crazy and would love for them to FO,
Yeah.
But or to FA so they can FO. But I don't see any of it ending that easily. I think Iran is going to resist. I think they have almost no choice at this point, because I don't see Israel letting go. And one of the arguments that Western media has been promulgating all day is, well, these were precision strikes, and they got vital materials, but they didn't get all of the intelligence. they also didn't get all of the materials. In other words, there's more to get. And the argument now that I see a lot of talking heads from the Israeli side and from the U.S. side, what I hear them saying is, well, those things are harder to track. They're in smaller spaces and they're diffuse. They're all over the region, which to me is not a concession that Iran got away with it. It's an argument for why they need to go through and penetrate all of Iran. Yep. And that to me is a non-starter for Iran. In my estimation, is a non-starter to Iranians. And so I would love to see this thing stop, whatever it takes. But what I suspect is that this is going to get a lot uglier before it gets better. And I think it's going to not just be a long-term thing. I'm talking about in the next 90 days, we're going to see some ugliness.
Yeah, to Mark's point about Russia, and leave it to Marc Lamont Hill to bring that in. He's a wise brother, because that's part of the story right now. The part of the developing narrative. Vladimir Putin is meeting with Iranian's foreign minister right about now, I think. So Russia has to decide how they're going to play this game and whose side they're going to choose, how they're going to show up. So it's going to get uglier. It's going to get messier, as Mark said, before it gets better. But again, that's the news right now, that Vladimir Putin is meeting with Iran's foreign minister. So we'll see what comes out of that and what Russia does on the other side of that particular meeting. More with Marc Lamont Hill when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time, whenever news breaks, while we're on the air. It's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. Thank you, thank you.
Freedom is an endless meeting, so let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Marc Lamont Hill. Marc Lamont Hill, here's a message from one of our listeners that I find sort of fascinating. This GBU 57 series MOP, Massive Ordnance Penetrator, better known as the Bunker Buster Bomb that Mark and I were talking about, is manufactured by Boeing, and cost hundreds of millions of tax dollars. How much, Marc Lamont Hill, is this attack an ad for Boeing to use when selling these bombs to NATO allies, which are being made to increase their defense spending these days?
Man, it's a big part of it. The great Gil Scott-Heron said, everybody love peace. Problem is you can't make no money off of it.
That's it.
You know,
yeah.
It's really that simple, man. This is the military industrial complex, Boeing in particular in this case, but the military industrial complex is always the looming, it's always the elephant in the room that often doesn't get named.
Yep. Let me ask you, I said I want to get to this earlier, so let's do it now. I'm fascinated as to how you think that black folk in particular ought to view, process, assess what's happening in the Middle East right now, specifically as we've been talking about Iran in this hour. Is there a particular lens through which we ought to see this?
Yeah, I think there's a few, right? I mean, I'd love to look at this purely from the moral lens at a certain level, right? That's just the human being that I want to be in the world, and say, look, people are dying. People are being killed. This is wrong. We could start there. I understand the black people listening to this to say, look, it's a whole lot of wrong in the world, and I got to focus on the wrong that's in my immediate surroundings. I can't worry about what's over there until I worry about what's over here. I ain't mad at that argument. But what I would argue is the resources, and particularly the financial resources, and the energy being placed in this particular issue it's a zero-sum game. Whatever we spend over there is money we not getting over here. We have to be clear-headed about that.
That's right.
There's also a way that, again, Iran is not only saying they're going to retaliate, they're making it very clear that they're holding the United States responsible. They were holding the United States responsible before Trump struck those three nuclear sites because of how much we financially and militarily and diplomatically enable Israel. Why is that relevant? Well, because that makes all of us vulnerable. That makes all of us unsafe, not just in foreign soil, but here. As Americans, we're sort of used to saying, well, there's never a war here, there's never an attack here, but there'd be some attacks here. And there's no reason to think that there won't be more because of what's happened.
That's right.
So there are all these things that make us less safe, but also undermine our ability to build what we need in this community. And the same institutions, the same financial commitments, the same arrangements, the same, relations of domination that create the problems we see in the Middle East, those same institutions and forces and power brokers, et cetera, operate here in the United States. And I want to be clear, because people hear words like power broker and they jump off the limb. I'm not talking about Jewish people. I'm talking about the military industrial complex. I'm talking about the people that manufacture the guns and the weapons. I'm talking about police forces. I'm talking about political lobbies. I'm talking about members of Congress, members of the Knesset, members of the Supreme Council in Iran. I'm saying there are political entities everywhere that benefit when there's crisis. So I'm saying all of these people that benefit from harm happening to vulnerable people, we're not immune to that. And who's more vulnerable than us?
I concur wholeheartely. I said to some friends over the weekend that you would never convince me that there aren't sleeper cells already inside of this country. And the question is never, if, but when. Since 9/11, we've been fortunate, but it's not a matter of if, but when. And to paraphrase what Dr. King said, I love the point that Mark made a moment ago that, what's being spent over there means it ain't being spent here. King put it this way: the bombs that are being dropped in Vietnam are landing in the ghettos and barrios of our cities. And so King was right then. Marc Lamont Hill is right now. I digress for now. Our remaining moments with Marc Lamont Hill when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
New Always Pocket Flex Foam will change the way you think about pads. Get full-size protection in a surprisingly tiny pack that fits right in your purse or pocket. Perfect for life on the go. With up to 0 leaks, 0 feel, and 0 bunching, you'll forget you're even wearing a pad. And Always Pocket Flex Foam is designed to adapt to your body, so you can move freely and confidently throughout your day. Experience the future of period protection with new Always Pocket Flex Foam. Pick up your pack today.
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
Tavis Smiley and Marc Lamont Hill for the next 4 minutes here. I've enjoyed this hour and always enjoy being in conversation with MLH. So here's what I'm thinking, Marc. I don't know how in this moment we protest against what Donald Trump is doing. I noted over the weekend there were some protests, but they were scant across the country, even as I think many Americans don't necessarily agree with what Donald Trump did or the way he did it, and have to be concerned, as you and I are, about the blowback we're going to get maybe, again, from these sleeper cells inside this country. I was reading a piece before I came on the air in The Intercept about many of the Democratic leaders, and not just members, Democratic leaders who are quietly supporting Donald Trump in this effort. So even Democrats aren't stepping up and challenging him on the way he went about doing this and why he did it. Even though, again, there's no real evidence, as you and I established earlier in this conversation, that would justify, to my mind or your mind, what he has in fact done. Democrats, we are told from a piece in The Intercept today, read it for yourself, are falling in line as well. With all that said, how in a moment like this, where we fundamentally disagree with the president who's putting us in harm's way, how do we protest his moves in this moment?
I think that there are a couple of ways to do it. Taking to the streets is always important. I think we need to be heard. I think we need to use our social media to voice ourselves, to voice our outrage. But there's a midterm election coming up as well. And I think we need to make it clear that these members of Congress who are silently complicit or explicitly backing this, that they need to be held accountable. I wish I could be surprised that Democrats are like this. Democrats, and I wrote a book called Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics, precisely because of the way that somehow these liberals, these radicals, these progressives, whatever you want to call them, they somehow have an asterisk when it comes to Israel-Palestine. And that extends really not just to Israel, but to Iran, to Saudi Arabia, to Yemen, to Sudan. There's a way that their sensibilities just change, and we have to hold them accountable. Trump does this because he knows there's no consequences. But Trump won't be here forever. But this Congress, on some level, will be, at least for the foreseeable future. And we have to make sure that they're held accountable as well. So it's not like there's nothing we can do for 3 years. No, we need to be loud. We need to be calling our members of Congress. We need to be protesting in the streets. And we also need to be supporting the international efforts to provide support and relief, because it's not just that these abstract ideas are being advanced. It's that children are being bombed, homes are being destroyed, school systems are being eradicated, cultures are being eliminated. And there are organizations internationally and locally that are doing the work to help repair that. So I encourage people to look into that as well, so that we don't just protest, but we actually try to repair some of the damage done.
I got 90 seconds left here. Let me pivot all together to the other side of this conversation with another story right quick. We see that Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia student protester, has been released. We see another judge telling the Trump administration they have to release Abrego Garcia. So at least on this front, it seems that Trump is finally starting to get some pushback. I got 45 seconds. I'll give it to you, Marc Lamont Hill.
I think Reverend Jackson always tells us, when we fight, we win, but also we don't win too many battles without fighting, I'm glad to see this happen. I'm glad to see the federal courts speaking up and chiding the Trump administration for operating completely outside the boundaries of the Constitution, not just on the Mahmoud Khalil issue and not just on the free speech issue with regard to protests at Columbia, but more broadly across a range of issues. I'm glad to see that. That is progress, but that's also a reminder that had we not done this work, that young man would be in jail right now, if maybe not even alive. And so we have to keep the pressure on them, because without it, we don't win.
Mahmoud Khalil is out, and Abrego Garcia, a judge has ordered that he needs to be released. So Donald Trump is finally getting some pushback on his out-of-control deportation plans. I digress on that for now. More perhaps on that later in the show or even on tomorrow's program. For now, I thank Marc Lamont Hill for coming in. Let me just put a final point on this. I said this earlier, actually over the weekend, about the value of black media. And I've said many times that there's no subject in the world that you cannot find a black expert on. I want y'all to recognize we just had an hour conversation about foreign policy with two black males. I'm going to leave it right there. There were two black men talking about foreign policy. There's nothing that we can't do. Every issue, there's an expert in black somewhere in the world. We got to challenge mainstream media to find more black experts to have these conversations. I'll leave it there. I love you, Mark. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too, brother. Talk to you soon. Peace.
More Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. At the UN, U.S. Ambassador Dorothy Camille Shea defended Saturday's strike on Iran, citing decades of threats from Tehran.
The time finally came for the United States, in the defense of its ally and in the defense of our own citizens and interests,